Ini mikabel alai et mitzvat haboreh ahavta l'reacha kamocha reacha kamocha ay 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 if you're able. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan l'tzeifi v'nafin ben yom uven laila. Baruch Ata Adonai melech haolam shesani b'tzalmo. Baruch Ata Adonai melech haolam shesani Yisrael. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shesani ben Chorin. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokeach yivrim. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam abi sharumim. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam atir asurim. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokef kefufim. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam rocha aretz al hamay. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shesali kol tzorki. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamechin mitzadei gaver. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ozei Yisrael b'gvura. Baruch Ata Adonai melech haolam motei Yisrael b'tifara. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hanoten li'ayev koach. Nenu hayom uv'chol yom l'chein l'chesed l'rachamim b'neicha. V'nei chol ro'enu v'timala l'chasidim tovim. Baruch Ata Adonai gomel chasadim tovim le'mo Yisrael. Hear Le'olam Yahed Ribon kol amim L'tzukotenu Nachnu apidim Tachanonenu Lefanecha. Ashrenu matol chelkenu umana'im goraleinu umayafa yerushatenu. Ashrenu she'anachnu mashkimim umarivim erev vavoker v'omrim pamayim b'chol yom Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai echad. Kadesh et shemcha amati she'shemecha v'kadesh et shemcha ba'olamecha shuatcha tarim v'tagbiah karneinu. Baruch Ata Adonai mekadesh et shemcha barabim. Page 70, Rabbi Yishmael Omer, B'shlosh Ashrei Mitzvot Adon Nedrashe, Michal v'chomer, Migzera Shabbat. Davar halamed minyano, v'davar halamed v'sofo, v'chein shnei ketuvim u'makdidim ze'ezer, ad sheyavo ha'ketuv hashlishi v'yakriv v'neihem. Yiratzon mifanecha, Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohe Avotenu, shetiten chachenu b'toratecha, v'nehiyeh mithalmidav shel Aaron HaKohen, ohev shalom, V'rodef shalom, ohev et habriot, u'makorban laTorah. Hayom, Yom Shabbat Kodesh, page 72. Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbat, Tov Lahodot L'Adonai, L'Zamer L'Shemcha Elyon, L'Yid Baboker Chasdei Lecha. Tzadik Katama Yifrakir Bavanon Yizgeh Shetulim Beveit Adonai B'chatzrot Eloheinu Yafriku. O Yenuvum B'Seva D'Shenim B'Ra'ananim Yiyu L'Hagid Ki Yashar Adonai Tzuri V'Lav Latabo. Page 80. David Adonai Ori V'Yishi Mimi Ira. Achat shalti meit Adonai otav לבקש, אחת שאלתי מאת אדוני, אותה אבקש. שבתי בבית אדוני כל ימי חיי, לחזות בנועם אדוני ולבקר בהיכלו, לחזות בנועם אדוני ולבקר בהיכלו. אל תסתר פניך ממני, לו האמנתי לראות בטוב אדוני בארץ חיים. קווה אל אדוני חזק ויאמץ לבך, וקווה אל אדוני. מזמור שיר חנוכת הבית לדוד, page 81. ארוממך אדוני כי דלתך ונכונתי אבי לי, אדוני אלוהי שורתי אליך. הפכת מזבחי למחול, פתחת שקי ותעזרני שמחה, למען יזמך כבוד ולא ידום. Adonai Elohai le'olam odeka. Please rise, page 83. Baruch Shamar v'hayaolam, Baruch Hu, Baruch Oseh Bereshit, Baruch Omer v'Oseh, Baruch Ozer Kayim, Baruch Motem la'aretz, Baruch Omer Baruch Ata Adonai Elohim Hacholam Ha'el Ha'av Harachamah. Yachid Cheolamim Melech Meshubach V'Arat Yad Shomor HaGadol. Baruch Ata Adonai Melech Mehulal B'Tishbachot. You may be seated. We're going to do a little jumping. We go to page 87. Torah Adonai Temimah. Torah Adonai Temimah. Torah Adonai Temimah. Meshivat Nefesh. Edut Adonai Ne'emana. Ne'emana. Makimat Peti. Pikudei Adonai Yesharim. Pikudei Adonai Yesharim. Pikudei Adonai Yesharim. Misamchei lehem mitzvat Adonai bara meirat Adonai yirat Adonai tehorah yirat Adonai tehorah yirat Adonai tehorah omedet lad mishpatei Adonai emet emet tzadku yachdav amechalim misahabet azetam yiyu l'ratzonim refi v'hegyon libi v'lefanecha Adonai tzuri v'goali. Page 92. Please rise. Hodu l'Adonai ki tov ki le'olam chasdo. Hodu l'Elohei ha'Elohim ki le'olam chasdo. Hodu l'Adonai Adonim ki le'olam chasdo. Le'oseh neflaot gedolot levado ki le'olam chasdo. Le'oseh hashamayim v'tvuna ki le'olam chasdo. Le'rok haaretz al hamayim ki le'olam chasdo. Le'oseh את השמש לממשלת ביום, כי לעולם חס ביד חזקה מוליך ונתן ארצם לנחלה, כי לעולם חסדו נחלה לישראל עבדו, כי לעולם חסדו שבשפלנו זכר לנו, כי לעולם חסדו ויפרקנו מצרנו, כי לעולם חסדו נותן לחם לכל בשר, כי לעולם חסדו הודו לאל השמיים, כי לעולם חסדו ידי די 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 היי די 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 היי 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 די די You may be seated. Let's jump to page 96. Ashrei Yoshvei Veitecha, Ashrei Yoshvei Veitecha. Ashrei Ham Shekachalo, Ashrei Ham Shadonai Elohim תהילת אדוני ידבר פיו, יברכו ועשה שם קודשו לעולם ועד, ואנחנו נברכיה מעתה ועד עולם. Hallelujah. Let's go to page 100. Hallelujah. 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 Hallelujah, Bikocho, Hallelujah, Berkiauzo, Hallelujah, Vigvurotav, Hallelujah, Kiro Gudlo, Hallelujah, Beteka Shofar, Hallelujah, Nevel Vechinor, Hallelujah. Hallelujah, b'minim v'yugav, Hallelujah, b'tzil tzalei shama, Hallelu b'tzilzalei trua, kol hanshama tehallel. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Kol hanshama tehallel. Hallelujah. Baruch Adonai Elohim Elohei Yisrael Oseh Niflo Levado Baruch Shem Kivodo Le'olam V'Yamalech Vodo Et Kol Haaretz Amen V'Amen V'Yivarech David Amen Kol Haaretz V'Yomer David Atahu Adonai Elohim Asher B'Chad Tavi Avraham V'Hotzeit U'Mechastim V'Samta Shemo Avraham ומצאת את לבבו נאמן לפניך, חרות עמו הברית לתת את רחנני. והים בקעת לפניהם ויעברו בתוך הים ביבשה, ואת רודפיהם השלכת במצלו כמו אבן במים עזים. וישנו ביום ההוא. ויהיה ישראל היד הגדולה אשר עשה אדוני במצרים, ויראו העם את אדוני, ויאמינו באדוני ובמשה עבדו. אז ישיר משה בני ישראל סוס ורוכבו רמה בים. האמין כאדוני יתרץ אויב. עד יבוא עמך זו חניתה. אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, כי לאדוני המלוכה ומשה בגויים, ועלו משה בהר ציון לשפוט את הארץ. והייתה לאדוני המלוכה, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. נשמת כל חי תברך את שמך אדוני אלוהינו. נשמת כל חי תברך את שמך אדוני אלוהינו. Adonai dai dai hai dai dai hai dai dai hai dai 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 hai dai dai hai dai 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 hai dai hai dai dai hai dai dai hai dai המולה ברוב השתשמע למנהג ולעולם בחסד וברתה אילופין למעלה שרק היה לברך את שמך המוח המציל מי ידמה לך ומי ישווה לך ומי יערוך לך האל הגדול הגיבור והנורא אל העליון קונה שמיים וארץ נהלל לך ונשבחך ונברך ונפארך ונברך את שם קודשך כאמור לדוד ברכי נפשי את אדוני בכל קרבי את שם קודשו האל בתעצומות עוזך הגדול בכבוד שמך הגיבור לנצח והנורא בנורותיך המלך היושב על כיסא רם ונישא.
The poem for today is called Night Visitors. by Kadya Molodowsky, a Yiddish poet. At night, a bird arrived at my door, knocked with its wings on my window and door. Come right in, fiddlebird, musician of my youth. I still put aside bread and water for you. Come right in and be my honored guest. We've both been decreed this life and this death. And then a cat strayed in from the night, scratched its claws, scratched and scraped. Come right in, dread childhood beast. Kitty cat, I've never not once grabbed the broom and said, scat, come right in and be my honored guest. We've been given the fate to be homeless and lost. A goat came next with its pointy goatee, knocked with its hooves, ground its horns. Come in, goaty, bloaty, beard, milk from a ladle. To this day your song transforms bed into cradle. Come in and be my honored guest. We've both been decreed a schoolteacher's lot. At night, a person came, stood by my door, and I was befallen with such anxious fear. Who are you? Are you holding a knife in your hand? Are you hiding betrayal? Do you hold smoldering brands? And I slammed the door shut and turned the lock, threw the bolt, and fell to the floor and put my face in my hands. The night grew dark, then as blindness is dark. My floor became hard as stone, and he stood on the other side of the door. From the other side I heard sobs and a moan. We'll continue in a moment with Shochenat.
שוכן מרום וקדוש שמו וקדוש שמו בפי ישרים תתהלל ובדברי צדיקים תתברך ובלשון חסידים תתרומם ובקרב קדושים תתקדש ומקלות רבבות שכן חובת כל היצורים לפניך אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו להודות להלל לשבח לפאר לרומם להדר לברך, להעלה ולקלס על כל דברי שירות ותשבחות דוד בן ישי עבדך משיחך השתבח שמך לעד מלכנו האל המלך הגדול כי לך נאה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו שיר ושבחה הלל וזמרה עוז וממשלה נצח גדולה וגבורה תהילה ותפארת קדושה ומלכות ברכות והודאות מעתה ועד עולם ברוך אתה אדוני אל מלך גדול בתשבחות אל ההודאות אדון הנפלאות הבוחר בשירי זמרה מלך הלכי העולמים. Page 254. שיר המעלות ממעמקים קראתיך אדוני אדוני שמעה וקולי תהיינה אוזניך קשובות לכל תחנוני עם עוונות תשמור יא אדוני מעמוד. כי עמך הסליחה למען תברר. קיוויתי אדוני, קיוותה נפשי ולדברו הוחלתי. נפשי לאדוני משומרים לבוקר, שומרים לבוקר. יחל ישראל אל אדוני, כי עם אדוני החסד והרבה עמו פדות. והוא יפדה את ישראל מכל עוונותיו. יתגדל ויתקדש מרבה, בעלמא דברך חירותי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון, וביום מכון ובחי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך, לעלם ולעלמי עלמיה, יתברך וישתבח, ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי דקודשה בריחו, לילה לילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירן דלמה, ואמרו אמן. ברכו את אדוני המבורך, ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, יוצר אור ובורא חושך, עושה שלום ובורא את הכל. אין קרקך ואין זולתך, אפס בלתך ומדום אלך. אין קרקך אדוני אלוהינו בעולם הזה, ואין זולתך מלכנו לחיי העולם הבא. אפס בלתך גואלנו לימות המשיח, ואין דומה לך מושיענו לתחיית המתים. אל אדון על כל המעשים ברוך ומבורך, בפי כל הנשמה גודלו וטובו מלא לדעת ותבונה, סובבים אותו המתגאה על חיו הקודש ונדר בכבוד, על המרכבה זכות ומישור לפני חיסו, חסד ורחמים לפני כבודו, טובים מאורו שברא אלוהינו, יצרם בדעת בבינה ובשכל, כוח וגבורה נתן בה להיות מושלים בקרב תבל, מלאים זיו ומפיקים נוגן העזיבם בכל העולם, שמחים בצאתם וששים בבואם, עושים בהם הרצון קונם, פאר וכבוד נותנים לשמור עליו ורינה מלכותו, קרא לשמש ויזרח אורה והתקין צורת הלבנה, שבח נותנים לו כל צבא מרום, תפארת וגדולה, שרפים ועופר חיות הקודש. איי 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 la 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 la, la la la, la 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 la, la la la, la la la, la 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 la, השבת מכל המעשים והמושבות אליו תתברך מושנו על שבח מעשי ידיך ועל מאורי אור שעשית יפרוך הסלע. תתברך כולם אהובים, כולם ברורים, כולם גיבורים, וכולם עושים במה וביראה רצון קונם, וכולם חותכים את פיהם בקדושה וטהרה בשירה ובזמרה, ומברכים ומשבחים ומפארים ומעריצים ומקדישים וממליכים את שם האל המלך הגדול הגיבור והנורא הקדוש הוא, וכולם מקבלים להם מלכות שמיים זה מזה ונותנים רשות זה לזה להקדיש לעצמם מנחת רוח ושפה ורוח ונימה קדושה כולם כאחד עונים ואומרים ביראה קדוש 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 מלוך כל הארץ כבודו והאופנים וחיות הקודש ברעש גדול מתנסים לעומת צרפים לעומתם משבחים ואומרים ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו לעולם אור חדש על ציון תאיר ונזכה כולנו מהרה לאורו ברוך אתה אדוני יוצר מאורו אבינו אב הרחמן המרחם רחם עלינו ותן בליבנו להבינו להשכיל לשמוע ללמוד וללמד לשמור ולעשות ולקיים את כל דברי תלמוד תורתך באהבה והאר עינינו בתורתך ודבק ליבנו במצוותיך ויחד לבבינו לאהבה וליראה את שמך. כי אל פועל ישועותה אתה ובנו בחרת מכל עם ולשון קרבתנו לשמך הגדול סלע באמת להודות לך וללכתך באהבה ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר בעמו ישראל באהבה שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוך בך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך והיום שמעתי שמוע את זה אשר מצוותכם היום לאהבה את אדוני אלוהיכם ולאהוב לו בכל אדוני אלוהיכם אמת, ויציב ונכון וקיים וישר ונאמן. לעד ולעולמי עולמים, על אבותינו ועל עלינו, על בנינו, על בנינו, על ישראל עבדיך, על אמת שאתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, מלכנו מלך אבותינו, גואלנו גואל אבותינו, יצרנו צור ישועתנו, כבודנו מצילנו מעולם ושמך, ואין לנו עוד אלוהים זולתך. עזרת אבותינו,
Top of page 114.
אתה הוא מעולם, המגן ובשל ונמלכם רב ונישא, גדול ונורא, משפיל גאים, מגביה שפלים, מוציא אסירים ופודה ענבים, ועוזר דלים, ועונה לעמו, ועונה לעמו, בית שבת אליו. תהילות לילי אלוהים ברוך וברך, משה ובני ישראל חנו שירה בשמחה רבה, ואמרו כולם, מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדע בקודש, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה, שיר החדש, שיבחו גאולים לשמך על שפתיה, יחד כולה הודו והמליכו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. צור ישראל ומה בעזרת ישראל, ופדחי דומך יהודה וישראל, גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו קדוש ישראל.
repetition begins on page 115b.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו אלוהי אברהם אלוהי יצחק ואלוהי יעקב אלוהי שרה אלוהי רבקה אלוהי רחל ואלוהי לאה האל הגדול הגיבור והנורא אל עליון גומל חסדים טובים וקונה הכל וזוכר חסדי אבות ומביא גואל לבני בניהם למען שמו באהבה זוכרנו לחיים מלך חפץ בחיים וכותבנו בספר החיים למענך אלוהים חיים מלך חוזר ופוקד מושיע ומגן ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם ופוקד שרה אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני מחיים מתים אתה רב להושיע מוריד אתה למכלכל חיים בחסד מחיים מתים ברחמים רבים סומך נופלים והופך עולים ומתיר אסורים ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומדור אליו מלך ממית ומחיה ומצליח ישועה מי כמוך ברחמים זוכר צורה ולחיים ברחמים ונאמן אתה להחיות מתים ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים מקדש את שמך בעולם כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום ככתוב על יד נביאך וקרא זה אל זה ואמר גדול 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 אדוני צבאות מלוך על הארץ כבודו אז בכל רעש גדול אדיר וחזק משמיעים קול מתנשאים לעומת שרפים לעומתם ברוך יאמרו במקומך מלכנו תופיע ותמלוך עלינו כי מחכים אנחנו היי 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 מתי תמלוך בציון בקרוב בימינו לעולם ותשכון תתגדר ותתקדש בתוך ירושלים עירך דור עד דור ולנצח נצחים איי 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 בינינו תראה ימלוך אדוני לעולם אלוהיך ציון לדור ודור, הללויה, לדור ודור נגיד גודלך ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש ושבחך אלוהינו מפני עולם ושלום ועד. כי אל מלך גדול וקדוש אתה ברוך, אתה אדוני המלך הקדוש. ישמח משה במתנת חלקו, כי עבד נאמן קראת לו, כליל תפארת בראשו נתת לו, בעומדו לפניך על הר סיני, ושני לוחות אבנים הוריד בידו, וכתוב בהם שמירת שבת, וכן כתוב בתורתך, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם, ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, כי 6 ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש, ולא נתתו אדוני אלוהינו לגויי ארצות, ולא הנחלתו מלכנו לעובדי פסילים, וגם מנוחתו לא ישכנו ערלים, כי לישראל עמך נתתו באהבה, לזרע יעקב אשר בה מכרת, מקדש שביעי, כולם ישבעו ויתענגו מטובך, ובשביעי רצית בו וקידשתו, חמדת ימימותו קראת, זכר למעשה וראשית. אלוהינו ולא אבותינו, רצה במנוחתנו, קדשנו במצוותיך, ותן חלקנו בתורתך, שבענו מטובך, ושמחנו בשבועתך, ותאר ליבנו לעובדך באמת, והנחילנו אדוני אלוהינו באהבה וברצון שבת קודשך, וינוחו בה ישראל מקדשי שמך, ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. רצה אדוני אלוהינו בעמך ישראל ובתפילתם, מהשבת העבודה לדביר ביתך, אישי ישראל לתפילתם אהבה תקבל ברצון, אותי לרצון תמיד עבודת ישראל עמך, ותחזינה עינינו בשובך לציון, ברחמים ברוך אתה אדוני המחזיר שכינתו לציון, מודים אנחנו לך אתה אדוני אלוהינו יצורכם. הטוב כי לא חלו רחמך, והמרחם כי לא תמו חסדיך, מעולם קיווינו לך, ועל כולם יתברך ויתרומם, שמך מלכנו תמיד לעולם ועד. וכתוב לחיים טובים כל בני בריתך, וכל החיים יודו חסלה, ויעללו את שמך באמת אל שועתנו ועזרתנו סלע, ברוך אתה אדוני הטוב שמך הולך נאה להודות. אלוהינו ולא אבותינו, ברכנו בברכה משולשת בתורה הכתובה על ידי משה עבדך מורה מפי אהרון ובניו, כהנים עם קדושך כאמור. יברכך אדוני וישמרך, יאר אדוני פניו אליך ויחונקה, יישא אדוני פניו אליך וישם לך שלום. שים שלום טובה וברכה, חן וחסד ורחמים עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ועל כל ישראל עמך. ברכנו אבינו כולנו כאחד, כולנו כאחד באור פניך. ברכנו אבינו כולנו כאחד, כולנו כאחד באור פניך. כי באור פניך נתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו תורת חיים, אהבת חסד וצדקה וברכה ורחמים וחיים ושלום, וטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל בכל עת וכל שעה בשלומך. בספר חיים ברכה ושלום ופרנסה טובה, ניזכר וניכתב לפניך. איי 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 אנחנו בכל עמך בית לחיים טובים ולשלום, אנחנו בכל עמך בית ישראל לחיים טובים ולשלום. ברוך אתה אדוני עושה השלום. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברכותי והנמיך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי בכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עולמי. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה על שמי קודשה בריחו לילה לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה ותשבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמא ויאמרו תתקבל צלות הון ובאות הון לכל בית ישראל קודם עווני ושמיה ויאמרו אמן יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן עושה השלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן.
Continue in a moment. The Torah service is on page 138, 39.
Ein kamocha b'Elohim Adonai v'ein k'maasecha malchutecha malchut kol amim u'memshaltecha b'chol dor v'dor Adonai melech Adonai malach Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed Adonai oz yemo yitain Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom Avarachamim tiva v'tzo ha'et Zion Tivnei chomot Yerushalayim Tivnei chomot Yerushalayim Kivecha levad batachnu melech el ram v'nisa adon olam Vayehivim so Aharon vayomer Moshe Kuma Adonai ve'afutzu oivecha ve'anusu misanecha mipanecha ki mitzion tetzeh Torah ki mitzion tetzeh Torah u'devar Adonai Yerushalayim Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah Le'amo Yisrael B'Yushat Torah Shedimrei Alma Be'anarachit Ve'lishme Kadisha Kadisha Yakira Ana Emar Tushbecha Be'anarachit Ve'anarachit Ve'lishme Kadisha Kadisha Yakira Anamar Tushbechan Yeravakhodamach Detitahat libi bioraita Vitashlim b'shalim delihi v'adekol amach Yisrael V'tavu chayim v'lishvah Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai
Adonenu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo. Shemo Yachdav Adonai Hagidula V'Hagibura V'Hatiferet V'Hanesach V'Achod Kiko B'Shamayim U'Ba'aretz. I got it. Oh, B'Shamayim. That's what Adonai Amam Romemu Meinu Ve'ishtachavu Lehadom Raglav Kadoshu Romemu Adonai Eloheinu Ve'ishtachavu Lehar Kodsho Ki Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu. You may be seated. Man, it is amazing to have an almost full tent again. It's so great. It is so great. And the parsha for this week is Vayelech, and I just want to share one little gloss about Vayelech that I learned a couple years ago, and I shared with the board this past week, and I want to share with all of you because I think it's really interesting. The first word is Vayelech Moshe. Well, the first two words are Vayelech Moshe. Moshe went. Okay, Moshe went. Vaydaber et hadvarim ha'ela el kol Yisrael. And he spoke to all the people of Israel, all of these things. And then he says, Vayomer alehem, bein me'av esrim shana anochi hayom. I'm 120 years old today. Lo uchal od latzeit v'lavo. I can no longer come and go. You know, I'm tired. Right, so what does it mean that he first said, well, he went and did something, and then he says, wait a minute, I can't go anywhere anymore. Right? This is the kind of thing that the rabbis love to hang midrash on. And they say, well, maybe Moshe went to all of the different encampments, and he didn't just say this to all the people in a public way that he's going to leave. No, he's going to go to each and every Israelite and say,
goodbye, you know, I'm going to miss you, and you're going to be okay. Chazak v'yametz, right? Be strong and courageous, and it's going to be okay. There's different kinds of things. He went to all of the different tribal leaders, and he went out and he really circled the camp and said, listen, I can't do this anymore, but I'm doing it one last time. Maybe, and I get this from Robert Alter, who's a great Bible scholar, who suggested that there was actually a transposition of letters here, and that it shouldn't originally read Vayelech, Moshe went, but Vayichal, Moshe finished up. Right? Moshe's been talking, all of Devarim is Moshe talking and talking and talking and talking. It's a very, very long goodbye. And Robert Alter thinks maybe Moshe is finally saying, you know, I'm done. I'm done. I've had my career and I have my life, and you're going to go on and have careers and life, but not me. It's very poignant. And yet there's this impulse in tradition not to accept that, right? Whether by mistake or by inspiration, somehow in the mind, and in the hand of one scribe, you lose the yud, or you lose the you flip the kaf and the lamed, and Vayelech and Vayichal, Moshe finished, too. It becomes Vayelech, Moshe went, because there's this impulse to never be done. Moshe's going to say he's done, but he's not done because he's going to keep going around. And we're going to say the Torah's done in just a few days. But we're immediately going to roll right back to the beginning. And so we hold both of these things. Right? Moshe is Vayelech, he's going out to the people, and he's also Vayichal. Moshe's done. He's led a life. And now it's time for others to read their lives. Vayelech is on page 1173 in your Chumashim. If you're at home and you do not have a Chumash, it is also Dvarim, chapter 31, verses 1 through 30. Okay right now. Vayazor, vayagim b'yoshia l'chol asim bo v'nomar, Amen. Hakol havu godenu chavod la Torah kohen krav. Yamod Nachum ben Yosef HaKohen Aliyah HaRishona Baruch Shenatan Torah L'Amo Yisrael B'Kedushato V'atem Medbekim Aleichem Chaim Kulchem Hayom.
Baruch Adonai Hamborah.
Baruch Adonai Hamborach Le'olam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai Hamborach Le'olam Vaed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Notein HaTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayelech Moshe Vaydaber את הדברים האלה אל כל ישראל, ויאמר עליהם, בן 120 שנה אנוכי היום, לא אוכל עוד לצאת ולבוא, ואדוני אמר אלי, לא תעבור את הירדן הזה, אדוני אלוהיך הוא עובר לפניך, הוא ישמיד את הגויים האלה מלפניך פירשתם. יהושע הוא עובר לפניך כאשר דיבר אדוני.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Natan Lanu Torah Emet V'chayei Olam Nata B'tochenu. Baruch Atah Adonai Notein HaTorah.
Ha'amod. Tzarivka. Bat Shlomo HaLevi V'chaval Aliyah HaShenit.
אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים, ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
אמן.
אמן. ועשה אדוני להם כאשר עשה לסיחון ולעוג מלכי האמורי ולארצם אשר השמיד אותם, ונתנם אדוני לפניכם, ועשיתם להם ככל המצווה אשר ציוויתי אתכם. חזקו ואמצו, אל תראו ואל תארצו מפניהם, כי אדוני אלוהיך הוא ההולך עמך, לא ירפך ולא יעזבך.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
שנה טובה.
תעמוד. נעמי בת אברהם ושרה לעלייה השלישית.
1174 verse 7.
Baruch et Adonai Hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach leolam vaed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach leolam vaed. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch ata Adonai noten ha'torah.
Amen. ויקרא משה ליהושע, ויאמר אליו לעיני כל ישראל, חזק ואמץ, כי אתה תבוא את העם הזה אל הארץ, אשר נשבע אדוני לאבותם לתת להם, ואתה תנחילנה אותם. אדוני הוא ההולך לפניך, הוא יהיה עמך, לא ירפך ולא יעזבך, לא תירא ולא תחת. ויכתוב משה את התורה הזאת, ויתנה אל הכהנים בני לוי, הנושאים את ארון ברית אדוני, ואל כל זקני ישראל.
Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam, asher natan lanu torat emet, v'chaya olam nata b'techenu. Baruch ata Adonai noten ha'torah.
The fourth aliyah is verse 10 on page 1174. Ta'amod. Bela Batsudit Vishlima Laliyah Haravi'it.
Baruchu et Adonai Hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach le'olam vaed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach le'olam vaed. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch ata Adonai noten ha'torah.
Amen. ויצב משה אותם לאמור, מקץ 7 שנים במועד שנת השמיטה בחג הסוכות, בבוא כל ישראל לראות את פני אדוני אלוהיך במקום אשר יבחר, תקרא את התורה הזאת נגד כל ישראל באוזניהם, הקהל את העם, האנשים והנשים והטף לגרך אשר בשעריך, למען ישמעו ולמען ילמדו ויראו את אדוני אלוהיכם ושמרו לעשות את כל דברי התורה הזאת, ובניהם אשר לא ידעו ישמעו ולמדו ליראה את אדוני אלוהיכם כל הימים אשר אתם חיים על האדמה אשר אתם עוברים את הירדן שמה לרשתה.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה. אמן.
מרדכי דוד ben Yaakov Sarah Aliyah HaChamishit. We'll pause for a moment and include a Mishaberach for the Cholim. As always, I will read our list and then I will pause and everyone is invited to stand and say the names of those for whom you are praying this week. Mishaberach Avotenu Avram Yitzchak Yaakov Sarivka Rachel Veleah Uyurech V'Rapeh et Yonatan ben Etel v'et Zipporah bat Yita v'et Leah bat Perobasha v'et Rita Vasquez v'et Rochel bat Rivka v'et Naftali Herzl ben Esther v'et Avram ben An v'et Leah Nachama bat Rachel v'et Daniel ben Naomi v'et Shmuel ben Etta v'et Eri Silverman v'et Liba bat Crandall v'et Perobasha bat Chia v'et Dov Yosef ben Yetta v'et David ben Chava v'et Chava bat Perol v'et Levia Margorlit bat Ilana Devora v'et Noah Chava bat Rachel v'et Adam Herschel ben Surel Fega v'et Josephine Arkwright v'et Alex Breskin v'et David ben Yisrael v'et Rivka bat Ruth v'et Chaim ben Toba Perol v'et Edward Last v'et Gerald Rosello v'et Roberta Laban v'et Paula Silverman v'et Yochanan Daniel ben Me'erol Tema v'et Tzvi ben Sarah Riva v'et Meryl Tema bat Chana v'et Yoshua Lev ben Esther Chaya v'et Dan ben Etel v'et Adina bat Liorit v'et Baruch Zerach ben Beula Pesel v'et Avram Moshe ben Zlata v'et Michaela Devora v'et Ann Perlman v'et Steve Oxgasi v'et Etel bat Rivka v'et Yocheved bat Frida v'et Eitan ben Esther v'et Shalom Chaim bat Bluma Necha v'et
Linda Crafton, Robert Wilson, Baruch Ben Mevorah.
anyone who's joining us on live stream is invited to stand. ואת כל החולים בקהילה הקדושה הזאת, הקדוש ברוך הוא ימלא רחמים עליהם להחזיקם ולרפאותם, וישלח להם מהרה רפואה שלמה מן השמיים, רפואת הנפש ורפואת הגוף, בתוך שאר חולי ישראל, שבת היא מלזעוק ורפואה קרובה לבוא, השתא בגלה זמן קריב, ונאמר Amen. The fifth Aliyah continues on page 1175, Varim chapter 31, verse 14.
Baruch et Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Hamvorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato
Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe, ein karevu yamecha lamut, kera et Yehoshua, v'hityatzevu, be'ohel moed, va'atzavenu, vayelech Moshe, v'Yehoshua, v'yityatzevu, be'ohel moed, vayera Adonai ba'ohel be'amud anan vaya'amod amud ha'anan al petach ha'ohel vayomer Adonai el Moshe hinecha shochev im avotecha v'kam ha'am hazeh bezana acharei Elohei nechar haaretz asher hu vashama b'kirbo va'azavani v'hefer et beriti asher karati ito v'chara apivo vayom hahu va'azavtim v'histarti vanai mehem v'haya le'echol ומצאו רעות רבות וצרות ואמר ביום ההוא הלא על כי אין אלוהי בקרבי מצאוני הרעות האלה ואנוכי אסתיר פניי ביום ההוא על כל הרעה אשר עשה כי פנה אל אלוהים אחרים ועתה כתבו לכם את השירה הזאת ולמדה את בני ישראל שימח בפיהם למען תהיה לי השירה הזאת לעד בבני ישראל.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata betochenu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Shabbat shalom. Shana tova.
Ari Lev, B'Shena Tova, L'Aliyah HaShishit.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech. Oh, Baruch hu Adonai Hambarach.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen. Ki avienu el ha'adama asher nishbati la'avotav savat chalav udvash ve'achal v'sava v'dashen ufana el Elohim achirim va'avadum v'ni atzuni ve'hefer et beriti ve'haya כי תמצאנה אותו רעות רבות וצרות וענתה השירה הזאת לפניו לעד כי לא תשכח מפי זרעו כי ידעתי את יצרו אשר הוא עושה היום בטרם אביאנו אל הארץ אשר נשבעתי ויכתוב משה את השירה הזאת ביום ההוא וילמדה את בני ישראל ויצב את יהושע בן נון ויאמר חזק ואמץ כי אתה תביא את בני ישראל אל הארץ אשר נשבעתי להם ואנוכי אהיה עמך ויהי ככלות משה לכתוב את דברי התורה הזאת עד ספר עד תומם. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נתת לכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה. אמן.
תעמוד. מרים בת אברהם ושרה לעלייה השביעית.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarah. Baruch Adonai Hamvarah Le'olam Ba'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Hamim V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
אמן. ויצב משה את הלוויים נושאי ארון ברית אדוני לאמור לפתוח את ספר התורה הזה ושמתם אותו מצד ארון ברית אדוני אלוהיכם והיה שם בך לעד כי אנוכי ידעתי את מריך ואת עורפך הקשה הן בעודני חי עמכם היום ממרים הייתם עם אדוני ואף כי אחרי מותי הקהילו אליי את כל זקני שבטיכם ושוטריכם ואדברה באוזניהם את הדברים האלה ואעיד בם את השמיים ואת הארץ כי ידעתי אחרי מותי כי השחת תשחיתון וסרתם מן הדרך אשר ציוויתי אתכם וקראתכם הרעה באחרית הימים כי תעשו את הרע בעיני אדוני להכעיסו במעשה ידיכם. וידבר משה באוזני כל קהל ישראל את דברי השירה הזאת עד תומם.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu torat emet v'chayei olam natan b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Shabbat shalom, shana tova.
Please rise.
Beautiful job.
יתקדש ויתקדש שמי רבה יעלמה דברה כרותי וימליך מלכותי בחייך רוב ימיך ובחייך בית ישראל בגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם ועליה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמך דקודשה דריכו לעילה ואלה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה ושפחתה ונחמתה ואמירה מעמה ואמרו אמן.
Would you call me up? I'm the mafia. Let's see, where's the... Yeah,
Ya'amod Arav
Binyamin Yonatan,
Binyamin Yonatan
Ben Akiva Yitzchak,
Ben Akiva Yitzchak
Shoshana.
Vishoshana Hamaftir. The Maftir can be found on 1178 verse 28.
Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Hakilu elai et kol ziknei shiftechem v'shoterechem va'adabera ve'oznehem et hadvarim ha'ela ve'aida bam et hashamayim ve'et ha'aretz ki yadati acharei moti ki hashchet tashchitun וסרתם מן הדרך אשר ציוויתי אתכם וקראת אתכם הרעה באחרית הימים כי תעשו את הרע בעיני אדוני להכעיסו במעשה ידיכם וידבר משה באוזני כל קהל ישראל את דברי השירה הזאת עד תומם.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chai olam nata b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Ya'amdu hamagbiya v'hagolelet v'kol ha'kahal.
V'zot ha'Torah asher sam Moshe lifnei b'nei Yisrael al pi Adonai v'yad Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Morasha kehilat Yaakov, Morasha kehilat Yaakov, Morasha kehilat Yaakov. Torah tziva lanu Moshe. You may be seated. Haftarah for Shabbat Shuvah is taken from both the book of Hosea and the book of Micha. And the book of Yoel. So we've got a smattering of prophets speaking on the theme of return. It is found on page 1235 in your Chumash. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nviim tovim v'ratza v'divreihem hanemarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai abocher b'torah u'Moshe avdo v'Yisrael amo u'v'nviei hamed v'tzedek. Shuvah Yisrael Adonai Ad Adonai Elohecha ki chashalta b'avonecha kichu imachem devarim v'shuvu el Adonai imru elav kol tisavon v'kach tov v'nishlama parihim sifateinu ashur lo yoshieinu al sus lo nirkav v'lo namarod Eloheinu l'maseh yadeinu asher b'cha yerucham yatom
ארפה משובתם, אוהביהם נדבה, כי שבה פי ממנו. אהיה קטל ישראל יפרח כשושנה, ויחשר שם כלבנון, ילכו יונקותיו, ויהי כזית הודו, וריח לו כלבנון. ישובו יושבי וצילו, יחיו דגן, יפרחו כגפן, זכרו כיין לבנון. אפרים מלאות לעצבים, אני תהיה באשורנו, אני כבראש רענן, ממני פרייך נמצא. מי החם ויבן אלה נבון בידיהם, כי ישרים דרכי אדוני, וצדיקים ילכו בם, ופושעים ייכשלו בם. תיקחו בשופר בציון, קדשו צום, קראו עצרה. האספו עם, קדשו קהם, קימצו זקנים, אספו עוללים ויונקי שדיים. יצא חתן מחדרו וכלכלה מחופתה, בין העולם ולמזבח יבכו הכהנים משרתי אדוני, ויאמרו חוס אדוני על עמך, ואל תיתן נחלתך לחרפה, למשול בעם גויים. למה יאמרו בעמים איה אלוהיהם? ויקנא אדוני לארצו, ויחמול על עמו. ויען אדוני ויאמר לעמו, הנני שולח לכם את הדגן והתירוש והיצהר, וצבעתם אותו, ולא אתן אתכם עוד חרפה בגויים. ואת הצפוני ארחיק מעליכם, והידחתי בארציה ושממה את פניו, את הים הקדמוני, אל הים הקדמוני, וסופו אל הים האחרון, ועליו אשום. ותעל צחנתו, כי הגדיל לעשות. אל תראי אדמה גילי ושמחי, כי הגדיל אדוני לעשות. אל תראו בהמות שדי, גידשו נאות מדבר, כי עץ נשא פריו, תאנה וגפן נתנו חילם. ובני ציון גילו ושמחו באדוני אלוהיכם, כי נתן לכם את המורה לצדקה, ויורה לכם גשם, מורה ומלקוש בראשון. ומלאו הגרנות בהר, דהשיקו היקבים, תירוש ויצהר. ושילמתי לכם את השנים אשר אכל הארמי, והילק והחסיל והגזם, חילי הגדול אשר שילחתי בכם. ואכלתם אכול בשבוע, וחיללתם את שם אדוני אלוהיכם אשר עשה עמכם להפליא, ולא יבושו עמי לעולם. וידעתם כי בקרב ישראל אני ואני אדוני אלוהיכם אהנו, ולא יבושו עמי לעולם. מי אל כמוך נושא עוון ועובר על פשע, לשארית נחלתו לא החזיק לעד אפו, כי חפץ חסד הוא. ישוב ירחמנו, יכבושו עוונותינו, ותשליך במצולות ים כל חטאותם. תיתן אמת ליעקב, חסד לאברהם, אשר נשבעתי לאבותינו מימי קדם. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, צור כל עמים, צדיק בכל הדורות, היה לנאמן האומר ועושה, מדבר ומקיים, אשר כל דבריו אמת וצדק. נאמן אתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו, ונאמנים דבריך, ודבר אחד מדבריך אחור לא ישוב ריקם. כי אל מלך נאמן ורחמן אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני, היה לנאמן בכל דבריו, רחם על ציון כי היא בית חיינו, ולעלו הנפש תושיע במהרה בימינו, ברוך אתה אדוני, משמח ציון בבניה. שמחנו אדוני אלוהינו באליהו הנביא עבדך, ובמלכות בית דוד משיחך, במהרה יבוא ויגל ליבנו, על כיסו לא ישב זר, ולא ינחלו עוד אחרים את כבודו, כי בשם קודשך נשבעת לו, שלא יכבה נרו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני מגן דוד, על התורה ועל העבודה ועל הנביאים ועל יום השבת הזה, שנתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו לקדושה ולמנוחה, לכבוד ולתפארת. על הכל אדוני אלוהינו אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך, יתברך שמך בפי כל חי תמיד לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. Ay, ay, ay. Ay, 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 ay. 7th. Sort of in lieu of our shorter prayers for our country, we'll have a slightly longer, though not too long, tekes. I made 50 copies because I thought I was being optimistic, but maybe I was actually being pessimistic. If you can't see one, if you're with someone who you feel comfortable sharing with, see if you can at least look on.
What does tekes mean?
Tekes is like a little ceremony. A little ceremony. Thank you.
I have no idea.
Thank you.
What was like?
Hayaradai, hayarai, harai, hiyaradai, hiyarai, harai, Adonai Shema Bekoli Adonai Shema Bekoli.
We'll read in English, responsively. Out of the depths I call to you, O Adonai.
O Lord, listen to my cry. Let your ears be attentive to my plea for mercy.
If you keep account of sins, O Adonai, Lord, who will survive?
Yours is the power to forgive so that you may be held in awe.
Look to Adonai. In Adonai I place my hope. I await the word of Adonai.
I am more eager for the Lord than watchmen for the morning are eager for the morning.
O Israel, wait for Adonai, for with Adonai is steadfast love and great power to redeem.
It is Adonai who will redeem Israel from all their sins.
I'd like to invite John up to share a few words.
would like to start out by reading to you the words I spoke back in 2001 at my temple in Staten Island, a few weeks after 9/11 on Rosh Hashanah, the temple in which I was bar mitzvahed and attended services for over 25 years. Words cannot describe the destruction inflicted upon Lower Manhattan. As a member of the volunteer fire department in my community, it was my honor to go down on Thursday and Friday, September 13th and 14th, and help with the rescue effort. I wish I could tell you that I performed some heroic feat and single-handedly saved someone, but I did not. Myself and 4 other members of our fire company went down into the depths of the devastation. We had no idea what we would find, what we would do, or how long we would stay. We did know that we would stick together and make sure everyone was always accounted for. When we got to the scene of this horrific attack, we couldn't believe what we saw. Undaunted, we checked in with the command post and went to work clearing the debris, the Bucket Brigade, as we are now known as. The task seemed infinite. How can we possibly clear all this? Little by little, bucket by bucket, we started to actually see West Street below our boots. People with food and water and dry clothes were constantly coming by and asking if we needed anything. I have never been so proud to be a New Yorker and an American. People working side by side, regardless of age, nationality, race, occupation, religion, and social standing. Everybody working together to achieve a common goal. I wondered, why does it take this type of disaster to unite everyone? Why can't we be nice to each other all the time? Will people go back to their old ways in 6 months? My wife tells me that I am a hero for going down and helping dig through the rubble to help find survivors and victims. I don't feel like a hero. I'm just helping my fellow man. That is the way my parents raised me. As many of you know, my dad passed away on May 3rd, 2000, almost 4 years to the day from when he suffered a massive stroke that doctors told us would end his life within a week. That man was a hero, a fighter. He never gave up. 8 months after returning from hospitals and rehabilitation, he told us he wanted to come to synagogue on Friday nights. We would sit in the corner by the door, similar to where I sit. I couldn't tell you what he was thinking each Friday, but I was thinking, thank you, God, for giving me another day with my dad. When he came for the high holidays that first year, Rabbi Stern came over to him. My dad was still in a wheelchair, and the rabbi welcomed him. Rabbi Stern said that he would pray that my dad would get well. My dad said no, pray that nobody else would get sick. We vowed that the following year he would walk into the synagogue on his own power and open the ark. And he did. This is just one of the many lessons I have learned about God, the fragility of life, and myself over the past 25 years. The true heroes in this disaster are the firemen and police officers who went inside the Twin Towers following the attack. They died trying to save lives. And the people who work at the Pentagon. When they were evacuated, they made their way onto the highway and away from the building. Someone yelled that they needed help. What did these people do? They ran back towards the Pentagon. And finally, the heroes of heroes, the people in the plane that crashed in Pennsylvania. There is no doubt that they saved thousands of lives in the most unselfish act imaginable. I had the privilege to meet a couple from Alabama. They are volunteer firefighters. They closed up their office and drove up to New York to help with the efforts. More heroes. As Jews, we have seen firsthand what hatred and bigotry can lead to. Now everyone in the world knows what we have known for much too long. Maybe now we can live together in peace, regardless of our religion or color, as fellow Americans, fellow human beings. May God bless each of you and your families with a happy and healthy new year, and may God bless America. And that is what I said 20 years ago. But as I stand here before you 20 years after the attack on the World Trade Center, so much has changed. So many of our loved ones are no longer here. We are dealing with a pandemic. the world seems on the brink, and many of us are still dealing with the effects of the recent storm, with so many of us losing so much. But we are still here, and as my mother-in-law would often say, God is still on the throne. As we move towards Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, I pray that God will keep us safe. I pray that each and every one of us will have a year filled with peace and tranquility, and God's light will shine on us and keep us safe. And we lost a lot of people, but I have to say that losing Les was a big loss for this temple. And I had spoken to the rabbi, and this is the quill that was used to write the Torahs that we have in the Ark. And the rabbi and I will make sure that this has a prominent place in the synagogue, so that generations from now, people will not forget what Les and Sybil did for this temple. Thank you.
אל מלא רחמים שוכן במרומים המצא מנוחה נכונה כנפי השכינה במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים לנשמות אחינו ואחיותינו נפגעי הטרור ב-11 בספטמבר ולנשמות כל כוחות הכיבוי וההצלה שמסרו נפשם על קדושת השם בגן עדן תהיה מנוחתם. ענה בעל הרחמים הסתירם בסתר כנפיך לעולמים וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמותיהם אדוני הוא נחלתם וינוחו בשלום על משכבותיהם ונאמר אמן.
God, full of mercy, who dwells on high, give rest on the wings of the divine presence among the exalted, holy, and pure, who shine like the bright firmament, to the souls lost in the terror attack on September 11th, and to the souls of the firefighters and first aid workers who gave their lives for the sanctification of God's name. May they rest in the Garden of Eden, please. Master of mercy, may they find shelter beneath your sheltering wings, and may their souls be bound up in the bonds of life. Adonai is their inheritance. May they rest in peace, and let us say, Amen. We'll read Reb Nachman's prayer for peace on page 2. May it be your will, Holy One, our God, our ancestors' God, that you erase war and bloodshed from the world, and in its place draw down a great and glorious peace, so that nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. Rather, may all the inhabitants of the earth recognize and deeply know this great truth, that we have not come into the world for strife and division, nor for hatred and rage, nor provocation and bloodshed. We have come here only to encounter you, eternal blessed one. And so we ask your compassion upon us. Raise up by us what is written, I shall place peace upon the earth, and you shall lie down safe and undisturbed. And I shall banish evil beasts from the earth, and the sword shall not pass through your hand. But let justice come in waves like water, and righteousness flow like a river. For the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Holy One, as the waters cover the sea. So may it be, and we say, Amen.
Join me. Oh,
Beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains' majesty, above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood, from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for heroes brood in liberating strife, what more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life. America, America, may God thy gold refine, till all success be nobleness, and every gain divine. You may be seated. Kol hakavod to Jack and John and Avinoam for beautiful words and voices. We return to the Siddur on page 148. Yekum porkan min shemaya china bechista v'rachamei v'chayarichem zona revichei v'sichem shmaya. Misha berach abotenu Avram Yitzchak v'Yaakov Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah u'v'yavorech et kol hakal hakadosh hazeh im kol gilot hakodesh hem u'bneihem u'bnotehem b'chol asher lahem u'misha miyachdim batei knisiyot letfilah u'misha ba'im b'tocham litpalel u'misha nodnim ner lemor b'yayin lekidush u'lehavdalah u'fad la'orchim Utztaka le'anim V'chol mi she'oskim b'tzorchei tzibur v'inyan Eretz Yisrael b'emunah HaKadosh Baruch Hu yishalem scharam v'yasir mehem kol machala v'yirpa l'chol gufam v'yislach l'chol avonam v'yishlach bracha v'atzlacha b'chol maseh yedehem im kol Yisrael achehem v'nomar Amen. We'll add a prayer for the state of Israel on page 149. Please rise. Avinu Shabashamayim Tzur Yisrael V'Golo Barech et Medinat Yisrael Reshit Tzmichat Gulatenu Hagen Aleya Be'avrat Chastecha Ufros Aleya Sukat Shlomecha Ushlach Orcha V'Amidcha L'Rosheya Sareya V'Yoatzeya V'Taknem Be'etza Tova Milfanecha Chazek et Yidei Meginei Eretz Kodshenu V'Anchilem Eloheinu Yeshua V'Ateret Nitzachon Teatrein ונתת שלום בארץ, ושמחת עולם ליושביה, וnomar Amen. You may be seated. Page 151. Ashrei Yoshvei Veitecha. Ol Yaluch Hasela. Ashrei Shekach Lo. Ashrei Shemalu. Tilat Adonai Yadaber Pi B'Yireh Kol Basar Shem Kodsho Le'olam Va'ed V'anachnu Nevarech Ya Me'ata V'yad Olam Hallelujah Hallelujah Et Shem Adonai Ki Nizgav Shemo Levado Hodemo
Ishtachavu l'Adonai behadrat kodesh. Kol Adonai b'hakoach, Kol Adonai behadar, Kol Adonai shover arazim, v'yishaber Adonai et arzei hamanon. Kol Adonai chotzev lavot esh, Kol Adonai yachil midbar, Yachil Adonai midbar kadesh, Kol Adonai yachol elayalot. Adonai lamabul yashav yeshev Adonai melech leolam Adonai oz li'amo yiten Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom
Nucho Yom
Shuvah Adonai remember the faith. את חיים למחזיקים בה לתוכחה מירושה דרכיה דרכי נועם לכל נתיבותיה שלום השיבנו
Seated. As always on Shabbat Shuvah, first time for me, but not the first time for you, I'd like to invite Avi Noam up to give his annual State of the State. B'vakasha.
Shana Tova and Shabbat Shalom to all of you. It's, I can't tell you how wonderful, really. It's wonderful, wonderful being here, seeing you face to face, and I want to thank all of you for making this place a home for us, home out away from home. And I want to dedicate my words. In Hebrew, there's an expression, Le'ilui Nishmat, and I guess the best translation will be in honor of to honor the memory of. In Hebrew, it's nicer. I can't really explain. but there's really something about it. The soul stays, and you can hire it, Ilui Nishma, to hire up the soul. So I do want to dedicate my words to dear Les, that really was a big fan of Israel, and we miss him very, very much. So when I think a lot about this, what to talk about Israel, and this time it was what not to talk about, because so many things have happened, especially in the past 2 years. So it was more of like, because we can go till Motzei Shabbat or Yom Kippur, on and on and on. So it was more not what to talk about. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that I do try, before I get into what I will talk about, I do try always to kind of give, I know there isn't such a thing as an average Israeli, like there isn't an average American, like there isn't an average human being. But I always try to kind of do something impossible, of bring different voices, but kind of a common ground of Israeli voice of what's happening in Israel. And I felt it very, very difficult this time, because I don't think there's an average. And I think it happens also here in the United States, things have split and divided in many different issues, political, non-political, COVID, non-COVID, whatever. It's all kind of splitted into left or white or black and white, you just name it, and it's very and it's harder for, when I was thinking about things to say, it's challenging and harder to think about like a common ground or a common Israeli that can give you an authentic voice on what's happening in Israel. So again, all what I'm saying is my opinion. I'll try not to upset people, to be and not to be political in a way, because things are legitimate. Anyone can think the way they think. So that's a short introduction. So what I did do is went 2 years back to when we spoke. I spoke 2 years ago, and that was the Chagim then were in the beginning of October, and October 2019. And just a few weeks before, on the 17th of September, there were the second elections in Israel. And I remember I remember that coming and saying how unusual and how crazy things are in Israel, and how we went into the second elections in 1 year, 2 elections, and not stable. And I did give kind of my insight about the feeling that what's happening and what will happen with the option already. I remember they were starting to think about, we're again in a way that we can't maybe form the third government, and maybe it's going to be crazy and we'll have a third elections, but it was kind of a nightmare when I said it 2 years ago. And I explained there just that we'll all be on the same page, that on our coalition system, where you probably know from the news, but we have a coalition system, 120 Knesset members. You need to form a government, 61, that's the magic number. You need 61 fingers to form that government, and what led to the first and second, that's when I spoke then, was deadlock. We had 60-60, there was no 61, and sometimes even with 61, you can't really survive more than just a bit, because the 61 is very fragile, and the minute a controversy comes along, so that goes away. And then, short 2 years, what happened in Israel, and you all followed the news, but so we went into the third elections, which were half a year later, was March 20th. And the third elections, and even more the fourth, were kind of stopped being right and left. You almost didn't hear any ideology, any what we're going to do, what we're not going to do. It was pretty much yes Bibi or no Bibi. That was the election. And I'm not saying here, people can like Bibi. There are good reasons to like him, or a lot of reasons not to like him. Anyone here can think whatever he wants. But that's the truth, is that was the division. It was division between yes Bibi and not Bibi. Almost all parties, part of what they said, came to the public and said, listen, when we get elected, or vote for us and we will form a government with Bibi or will never form a government with Bibi. That was the ideology, and people said there were a few, and I'll get to it in a minute. There were a few parties who kind of stayed on the fence and wanted to see what's happening, but most parties were very, very clear of what they're going to do, and that was the division. And after the third elections, so we were again in a deadlock. And then something very significant happened. I won't get into all the details because it's numbers and complicated, but a few parties broke into smaller parties. And a very, very big party, Benny Gantz was the head of a big party called Kahol Lavan, blue and white. They split back into two smaller parties, and the party of Benny Gantz, they decided that for the sake of Israel, we can't go again and again and again to elections and elections, and they're going to start speaking with Bibi, and Bibi also understood that we can't go on this way, and they formed a government. It was formed of the Likud party, which was the biggest party, together with Kahol Lavan, a smaller party, but still a very big party. And they came up with this almost new, I'm not saying totally new, but a new, almost new concept of a rotation. That means a year and a half, Bibi will be prime minister, then a year and a half, Benny Gantz will be prime minister, and the last year, Bibi again, prime minister. I think that was the deal. Adds up to 4 years. But besides the rotation, I said the rotation itself wasn't totally new, because back in the 80s we had once with Shamir and Peres. They had a 4-year government, a joint government. That's how it's called, a joint government. We hear a lot about it, and it happened in the 80s, where they did 2 years and 2 years, and it actually worked. They survived 4 years. But here they did this new concept that's called an alternative prime minister, Rosh Memshala Chalufi, which means that every time that the other person is not prime minister, so it starts with Bibi prime minister, and Benny Gantz would be the alternative prime minister, and then there will be vice versa. If you'll ask why is that, just a small, it's all because this legal issue. In order to give Bibi a real position while he's not prime minister, the sense says you can put him the minister of, minister of defense force, of foreign affairs. But you can't, because there was a law case a few years ago that the minute you're charged by the state wants to prosecute you the minute you're prosecuted by the state, so you can't be a minister. So that put in a weird situation. You had to find something for the time where he's not prime minister, so they came up with this thing of an alternative prime minister. And I'm saying it's very significant because I'm going to get now to what we have now, and they stayed with this very weird concept, although Bibi is not in the picture anymore. And for doing that, they also changed the basic law, which is a big deal in Israel. They kind of really twisted, we're a young democracy with not a lot of democracy heritage, and they already were able to twist things in a way that doesn't really make sense, and I don't think makes the democracy stronger and stable. And now we're kind of, I'm not saying stuck with that, because they could have decided not to do that, but it's here. It's there already. Everyone wants the kavod, the honor to be a alternative prime minister. It's good for the parties for negotiation. It's always good because you have another card to deal with. That's a very significant thing that happened in the third elections. So what happened? We went into those. They formed a government, and it just didn't work. Didn't work at all. The two big parties, which was Benny Gantz and the Likud, didn't get along, fighting constantly, weren't able to do almost any legislation. They had an agreement of dealing only with COVID, mostly with COVID things, so they did that, but also not in such a successful way. And essentially, we were with a government, but not a functional government. So So that didn't work, and the reason why it really spread apart was regarding the budget. There's a certain date through our laws that you need to pass a budget, and if you don't pass a budget at that date, the government just automatically has 3 months to live, and then you need to go to elections again. And that's what happens. And I'll tell you something. Other people say, okay, I'll try. I'm trying here to stay in the middle. But Bibi, I think, in his mind, it was almost a year in the government. He knew that in half a year he'll need to step down, and Benny Gantz will go into office. And he just decided that that's not for him, and he can do better. And I think even right wings in Israel will admit that that's what Bibi thought. He saw the cards. He said, listen, in a few months I'll need to step down from being prime minister. There's no way I can't. The only way I can continue being prime minister is if we go again to elections. And that's what happened. We went again to elections, to the fourth elections. And here we come to a very interesting thing that happened. Again, fourth elections, totally, yes Bibi, not Bibi. Okay? There were two parties that were kind of on the fence. Okay? One party was an Arab party called Ra'am. Okay? That's a very interesting. I'll say a few words about that soon. But the Ra'am party said, I want to be, for the first time, part of an Israeli government. Because the Arab parties, traditionally, when the state was 70-something years ago, always in the opposition. They never formed, they were never part of the Israeli government. So here you had a party coming and saying, vote for us, and we will be part of the Israeli government. They didn't say if it will be, they said, we'll even be with Bibi, we'll be with the left, the right, but we want to be part of the Israeli government. And the second party is the Yamina party, who's Naftali Bennett, who's now prime minister. I was told that maybe people in the United States don't even know who now the prime minister of Israel is since Bibi stepped down, but so it's Naftali Bennett, he's the prime minister. So Yamina party traditionally is also a definitely right-wing religious party, but their campaign was, I want to be prime minister. His campaign was, Naftali Bennett said, vote for me, I want to be prime minister, I don't know what I'm going to do with Bibi, yes Bibi, not Bibi, we'll see, we need a right-wing government, and we'll do whatever's the best for Israel. So, on one hand, he always said, I won't go with the left parties. He promised. He even came on TV and signed this note, in front of the cameras. Read my lips, pretty much. I will never sit with Yair Lapid. That was a week before elections, because everyone tried to say, you're bluffing, you're going to do this, you'll do that. And he came up and said, I won't do this, I won't do that. And again, so he did that, but his message was always, I'll do whatever is best for Israel. We can't go to fifth elections. I'll do whatever I can do not to go to fifth elections. So it's like a trick playing, because sometimes you promise a lot of things and you just can't fulfill all the promises because they really don't go one with each other. So the results of the fourth elections put the Likud as the biggest party, but between the four elections, the lowest mandates they ever got. They were down to 30, where they were 35, 33, I don't remember all the numbers, but they were down to 30. So less people voted for the Likud. And Yesh Atid, that was the party that broke away from Kahol Lavan. There were two parties, Kahol Lavan and Yesh Atid, with Yair Lapid. They got 17 mandates. They were the second largest party. And then you had a bunch of small parties. The numbers pretty much added, again, depends how you count, but again, we were in the same deadlock, 60-60. You didn't have a real right-wing government. You didn't have a real left-wing government. So it was understood that something weird, something has to happen, okay? In law school, they always say bad cases make bad law, so that's the case here. You had bad cases. The bad case is 2 years of elections with no real government, no budget, no legislation. We need to move forward. And the solution is also not a great solution. So what happened, they started talking with each other. It was very not easy, a lot of blaming, but in the end of the day, it brought this Yamina party that got only 7 chairs, okay? That's almost not the smallest party. Like, there were a few parties with 7 chairs. One with 6 and one with 4, which is the Arab party. But all the rest of the parties, which is a few, are or larger parties or the same numbers of mandates. So you have this very small party with 7 chairs. And this negotiation, people, I mean, they understood that the only way to form some kind of government is to allow Naftali Bennett, who came also with a campaign that I want to be prime minister, which was very smart, to put him as prime minister. And we stayed with the alternative prime minister, which we have Yair Lapid and Naftali Bennett. Those are the 2 people. It's 2 years and 2 years. That's their agreement. 2 years of Naftali Bennett. Were about half a year into this new government, I think. Yeah. And then they switch. Naftali Bennett will be the alternative prime minister, and will stay. And Yair Lapid will be prime minister. Now, I mean, I'll point out three points that I think are very significant. One, I said already about the alternative prime minister, which I think is bad for democracy, but it's staying, for now it stayed in Israel. The second thing that I think is bad, and I'm not saying good, bad government, because people really can think whatever they want, but what brought us, that's why I said bad cases make bad law, because what brought us the situation where you have a prime minister of a country with only 7 chairs is not good. It's not good for democracy. I understand why it has to be. I understand everything, and I tried to give you a short explanation why that was pretty much the only solution. But it's not good for democracy. And as a matter of fact, I said that Naftali Bennett is a head of a party, a right-wing religious party, mostly. And I would roughly, there were polls that came out, but roughly saying, I would say between 30 to 40% of his voters will never vote for him again, because they see him as someone who betrayed them. He went with the leftist, he promised things and he did exactly the opposite, and they're right. I mean, if that's what his answer is, I promised this, but I also promised that there won't be 5th elections, and that's the only option we have. And I'm prime minister, and through being prime minister, I'll do things that you wanted, that's why you voted for me, which is also right. So you have a prime minister in Israel that is backed by 7 chairs, and when I say 7, it's not really 7, because one of the Knesset members from his party didn't agree with him, wouldn't resign, so he's like in the party but not voting for the government. So he's really in charge of only 6 people. The 7th one he's just put aside, and he supports Bibi, and he said we did a big mistake, so I'm not even counting him. So we have almost the smallest party in Israel, and he's the prime minister right now, and he truly doesn't have a real base of people that will elect him. So it's not even a strategic thinking about, okay, if I'll do this, so then for the next elections I'm sure he's thinking about it, but it's a situation where there's not really any realistic chance that he'll continue to be prime minister in the next elections. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, although all what we're in right now also doesn't make sense. So so I think the idea is, but if he'll be like an outstanding prime minister, maybe he'll get votes from here and from there. But the problem is that he's now kind of stuck in the middle. The left-wing parties will never vote for him because he's still the right-wing religious. That's not his. I mean, he won't get votes from there. So in the middle, there are some votes maybe that he can collect from here and there, but there's not much that's on the table that he can really collect. So it's a very, very weird situation. That was the second point. And the third one is, I mentioned the Arab Party, Ra'am. Now it's very interesting what happened with the Arab parties. They unified to one big party, and in the second elections they got 15 chairs, which was outstanding. I mean, they went out in high percentages to vote. Huge success for the Arab population in Israel, Israeli Arabs. And after the second elections, were very, very disappointed. They saw that we're going into third elections and to fourth elections. Numbers went down. The unified Arab party divided back into two parties. And this smaller party, Ra'am, so they came and they said, listen, they came to the Arab population and said, listen, we have large differences, ideology differences between the Israeli population, the Jewish Israeli population. Doesn't matter if it's right or left. We need to focus on civil matters regarding the Arab population in Israel. There's education, there's health, there's sewage, building, young couples, you name it. There's so many things to do without talking about, territories, not territories, who is here first, who's to blame. Let's look forward, move together, and we want to be part of the government for the first time. Now, Bibi, back to Bibi for a second, between the third and the fourth elections, understood that for him to pass the magic number of 61, he needs that party. And he started talking to them, and he started to make it public. And he came in front of the public and said, they're okay. We can sit with them. It was not as clear as I'm saying now, but that was the message. He was preparing already the public in Israel for the day after the fourth elections, where they're going to be part of coalition without all the right-wing parties jumping on him and saying, you're a betrayer, you're doing the most evil thing, you can't do that, we're leaving you. And when Bibi does that, and Bibi is by far, is still the most powerful politician in Israel, when he says that, that's very significant. And it's significant to the right wing and to the left wing. Even left-wing parties wouldn't be able to do that alone without, because if you're a left party, so you're joining the Arab Israelis, you're betraying the state. And I don't think that anyone in the left-wing parties or a leader from the left would be strong enough to do that by themselves. But Bibi prepared this, and he was almost able to pull that out. But one of the parties that he also was very encouraging them to run, and he did all kinds of brought in people to make sure that there'll be significant party. The Tzionut Hadatit they're called. It's the most far to the right in Israel. And they got 6 chairs, but the minute they heard, and during their campaign they said it already because they knew where they're going, they said, no chance. We are not part of a government with that Arab party. So it was a great plan. Didn't work out till the end. I mean, a great plan by Bibi, but it didn't work out. So then the other parties suddenly had this option which they didn't have before. And now we have a government with a prime minister with a very, very small, only 6 chairs, but he's the prime minister, and with the Arab party, and they have 4 seats, that they're part of the government. And I think that that is very, very significant. The joining of an Arab party to Israeli government, that's something to stay. It happened. We crossed the line, and again, no matter what you feel, your strong feelings about the Jewish state, how it should, I think focusing on or trying to understand that you need to, in some ways, focus on civil areas, deal with education, deal with health, deal with things, and put aside, say, listen, we're putting aside things, is something that Israel has to do in order to move forward. And I'm saying it not only with the Arab population, it's the same thing with the Haredi population, with the ultra-Orthodox. Instead of fighting all the time, you have to go into the army, and if you don't go into the army, we won't do this, we won't. No, a lot of them won't go into the army. Maybe there's a small percentage who will. Okay, now how do we do? How do we send them to universities? How do we bring them to work and not only to studies in yeshiva? How do we improve the education? How do we try to involve them in society in different ways? Those are things that you hear those voices now, and I think that's why what happened in these past elections was very, very significant. So that's 1 second. So that's pretty much where we're standing right now, and the minute this government formed, there was, even at work, we had like this small game about how many months the government will survive. So we were a team of about 6 people, and it started from 3 months, and the most, we went around the table, the most said like 1.5 years, and then I said 3.5 years. Now, I hope you'll forget it if it's not true, and I hope you'll remember next year if it's true. And why am I saying that? First of all, this government, the people forming this government really, really want it to work. And I think that's most, in the end of the day, it's people, it's human beings. If they have some trust, they don't have all trust in each other. I'm not going to make a beautiful picture. There's big differences between the party. If you would tell me 2 years ago that this is the government, I will laugh at your face and I would say no chance at all. But they really, really want this to work. That's one. 2 is that if it doesn't work, most parties will pay a large price. And there's no situation where they pull out of it right now and gain anything from it. And that's even more powerful than the first point, because they're politicians. And for the small parties from the right wing, definitely, they're pretty much doomed. They want to do as much as they can in this government, and to do good, whatever they see as good, they want to be influenced and do as much as they can. And with the left party, people do understand that the numbers are not so much for them. I mean, Israel has gone, generally speaking, to the right with the numbers. It's almost impossible to think of 61 numbers of a real left-wing or center-left-wing government in Israel. And after forming this government, after 12 years of a totally right-wing government, it will also be bad with their voters, saying, here, we got to this step and now you're ruining it. We accomplished so much. You can't go back and ruin it. So there's so much, you can lose so much with breaking this, that's I think will really stick this together. So that's kind of a short overview on where we are now in Israel. And I wanted a word about COVID, because I think COVID is kind of also, what happened with COVID in Israel is also kind of an explanation of Israel. If you see the graphs, and I know it's all over the world, it goes up and down, and it's not Israeli specifically, but in Israel the lines are very, very extreme. And in certain points during the COVID, Israel was, I would say, almost the best in the world, with nothing. I mean, we call it green countries and red countries. I don't know if it's so totally green. Like, we got to a point where 10 new cases a day. And when we're bad, we're the worst in the world. Okay? So now, unfortunately, the numbers in Israel are way, way, way up there. And I think it's very Israeli, okay? For the good and for the bad. Because when we have, and it started also in the beginning and also with vaccines, when Israel has a short-term project or a sense of urgency, I think we're great at that. We know to come together. We know to do stuff. We're creative. We know how to... We even listen, okay? We even listen to the rules. We're very bad at that, but when it's really something short-term, we'll stay in our houses pretty much. We'll try not to do all the games that usually we do, but in the day by day. And that's why also in the first period there was a lockdown, a serious lockdown, and our feeling was when we got to May, I'm talking about May 20, it was like, oh, we don't have COVID anymore. And then of course everything opened. Then we got already to the Chagim, last Chagim, okay, September last year, and the numbers were just unbearable, back into lockdown. And again, the vaccines come, so suddenly we're the best. The vaccines, it was unbelievable how efficient, really. And I know our healthcare system, and sometimes it's awful. And suddenly, so efficient, you go, you have, it's all on your iPhone. You have everything, you set a date from today to tomorrow, you wait in line for a minute and a half, you get vaccinated, you're home. That's pretty much how it was controlled. With the data, everyone, I mean, you're getting the data. So, but again, that's a short-term thing. We're good at that. Again, open, and then that's how it is. And I think that's the description of how things of COVID, how Israel is dealing with it, is exactly part of Israel's DNA. When it comes to a long-term thing and to deal with something long-term, it's hard. We're not good with that. Our numbers are going up. Very, very hard to control it. And again, when there's a short term or a term of emergency, like right now, so we're good at that. And I don't know, I can just pray that things will get better here and in Israel and all around. But I have a feeling that we'll still be dealing with this during this coming year. And I do want to end, because it is Shabbat Shuvah. The rabbi said traditionally this is the time where you need to tell everyone to repent. So just a few words of connected to Shabbat Shuvah, and it's also connected to just what I said about the ups and the downs that I think we all felt during this past year. So when I got here, I went jogging in Glen Island, and when I came back, I even told Bob when I came back that I never saw the tide was so low. And for me, in the Mediterranean, you barely see if there is tide, but here suddenly I saw, and it was, when I went running there on the way, there's a part where usually there's water, and now there wasn't, and it was ugly and muddy, and you see all like the garbage, and it wasn't pretty to see. And I thought about it, that in Hebrew it's not high tide and low tide. There are two beautiful words for that. When the tide is high, you say geut and shefel. Geut comes from the word pride, and shefel comes from the word humiliation. Did I say that right? Humility. And both those words in Hebrew have good and bad in both of them. Because in pride you have, of course, it's good to be proud of what you're doing, but there's also the sin, chet haga'ava, the sin of pride, when you're too pride. And also humility. You can be humiliated, which is definitely negative, and you don't need to be a humiliated person, but to be modest and humility is also a very honorable thing. And when I was thinking of that, it brought me to this Parashat Shavua, and I think Moses got it. He understood. He understood that it's complicated. It's not good or bad, or just good or just bad. And one of his not the last pasuk of this parasha, but one before. I mean, it's almost his last words to the people of Israel. And what does he say? He says, "Yadati ki acharei moti ki ashchet ashchitun." I know that after I pass away, you're going to do bad things. That's almost the last words that he's saying to Israel. And the last words is still, and he read to them the Torah, and he gave them the Torah. And I think that image, and I'll end with that, the Rav Kook, when he speaks in his book of Orot HaTshuvah, he speaks about the hard work of Chazara B'Tshuvah, because the easiest thing is just to throw away a lot of things. And when you understand it, there's not just good or just bad, so you need to work harder. You need to dig in and see if what you did, what part of what you did was bad, and what part of what you did is good. And there's an image that I heard of someone, it's when you're cleaning your closet. So you take out a bunch of shirts and you start going one by one by one by one, and usually it ends with two results. Or that you just take a chunk of things and throw them away, and you probably throw away a lot of things that you would probably want to keep, or that you're tired and you just take the whole thing and stuff them back in the closet. And if you keep that image of Chazara b'Tshuvah, so that image is, that's the hard work that you need to do. You need to go piece by piece and see. Sometimes you do a good deed, but you hurt someone on the way. Sometimes you hurt someone, but you did a lot of good things on the way. And I wish us that we can also have the time to dig in and to think about the good things and the bad things, and to hold this understanding that the good and bad, it's not evil and not evil. And it connects to also what I started with, this giant separation about he thinks this, so he's an evil person, he thinks that, so she's an evil person. So I think we need to understand to hold this complexity and to try to do as much as we can good during this coming year. Shana Tova.
Please rise, page 155. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah v'amad yivrak yiruteh v'yamlich machuteh chayechon v'yamechon v'chayetchon beit Yisrael b'galaz v'kariv v'imromen shemei rabbah b'zarach le'lam ha'mayah yisharak v'yishtabach v'yitpar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitala v'yitalal shemei d'kudashah b'richu le'la le'la min kol v'chata v'shirata Tuz b'chata v'nechamata damiran v'yama v'yimru amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibur v'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'konei Hakol v'Zocher Chasdei Avot ומביא גואל לבני בניהם למען שמו באהבה מלך עוזר ופקד מושיע ומגן ברוך זכרנו לחיים מלך חפץ חיים חדבנו בספר החיים למענך אלוהים חיים מלך עוזר ופקד מושיע ומגן ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם ופקד שרה אתה גיבור לעולם עולם חיים מתים אתה רב להושיע מוריד הטל מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ברופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דו מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה, מצמיח ישועה. מי כמוך באב הרחמים, זוכר יצוריו לחיים ברחמים. ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים נעריצך ונקישך בכיסאות שרפי קודש המקדישים שמך בקודש ככתוב על יד נביאך וקרא זל זה ויאמר קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות ולכל הארץ כבודו כבודו מלא משרת שואלים זה לזה איה מקום כבודו כבוד אדוני ממקומו. ממקומו יפן ברחמים ויחרונם המייחדים שמו ערב ובוקר בכל יום תמיד פעמיים באהבה שמה אומרים ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד הוא אלוהינו הוא אבינו הוא מלכנו הוא מושיענו והוא ישמיענו ברחמיו שני לעיני כל חי להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם ובדברי קודשך כתוב לאמור ימלוך אדוני לעולם החי ציון לדור ודור הללויה לדור ודור נגיד ועוד לך נצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד כי המלך גדול וקדוש אתה ברוך אתה אדוני המלך הקדוש תקנת השבת רוצים מוסף יום השבת הזה עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום, שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. יתגדל ויתגדל שמי רבה, ויאמר דברך יראה ויאמר מלכותי וחייכון ויאמריכון. וחיית כל בית ישראל בגלה זמן קריב ויאמרו אמן. שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם לעמיה, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתהלל ויתהלל שמי דקודשא בריחו לילה לילה מן כל ברכתיו ושירתה טוב ברכתיו ונחמתה דמירם ויאמר ויאמרו אמן. תתקבל צלתנו ובתנו לכל ישראל. תקבל צלתנו ובתנו לכל ישראל קדם אברהם תשמע ויאמרו אמן. יהי שלום רבה מן שמיים וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ויאמרו אמן. אין כאלוהינו, אין כאדוננו, אין כמלכנו, כמושיענו, מי כאלוהינו, מי כאדוננו, מי כמלכנו, מי כמושיענו, נודה לאלוהינו, נודה לאדוננו, נודה למלכנו, נודה למושיענו, ברוך אלוהינו, ברוך Adonenu Baruch Malkeinu Baruch Moshiach Atahu Eloheinu Atahu Adonenu Atahu Malkeinu Atahu Moshiachenu Atahu Shektiru Avotenu Lefanecha Ektoret Hasamim Aleinu L'Shabeach Ladon Hakol Latet Gdula Shelo Asanu Kigoye Harasot Shelo Samanu Shelo Sam Kekenu Kahem V'Gor Aleinu V'Kol Hamonam V'Anachnu Korim U'Mishtachavim U'Modim Lifnei Melech Malchei HaMlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shehu Natan Shemayim V'Yosenu Shabbat Elohim Yakiru v'yidu kol yeshrei tevel Kakatu b'toratecha Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed V'nemar V'haya Adonai L'melech al kol ha'aretz V'yom mahu Yiyeh Adonai echad U'shemo
Seated. This week we observe the Yartzeiton of Joseph Castiel, brother-in-law of Mercedes Castiel, Kenneth Rosenberg, brother-in-law of Sybil Rosenberg, Joseph Katz, father of Arthur Katz, Cesar Martinez, brother of Patricia Cabin, Esther Weinberg Schafferstein, grandmother of Florence Grossman, Lottie Brand, aunt of Melanie Samuels, Kenneth Breskin, father of Greg Breskin, and Abraham Silver, father of Patricia Levinson. We also recall Chaim Simcha, Ramon Berger, and David Furgang, all of whom are memorialized on our board. May their memories always be a blessing in this community. Page 184 is Mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah. Be'alma divra kirutei ve'yamlich malchutei bechayechon uvyomechon uvchaye dechol beit Yisrael ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam olalmei almaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnasei Vitadar, Vitale, Vitalal, Shmei Dekucha, Brichu. Le'ela, Mikol, Birchata, V'shirata, Tush Bechata, V'nechemata, Damiran, Be'alma, V'imru, Amen. Yehei Shalama, Rabba, Min Shemaya, V'chaim, Aleinu, Ve'al Kol, Yisrael, V'imru, Amen. Osei Shalom Bimromav, Huya, Sei Shalom, Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Before I invite David up, I'd just like to extend a Yasher Koach to Avinoam for beautiful Shacharit and to Jeff for beautiful leadership throughout, to John for beautiful words of Torah and to for beautiful words about September 11th, and of course to Rabbi Dina Shargel for laning beautifully for us as always. Of course, once more to Avinoam for the state of the state. Anyone I'm forgetting? I don't think so. I hope not.
Shana Tova, Shabbat Shalom. It's always wonderful to see everyone, and I really sincerely mean that. First off, I want to thank Andrea Priggett and Heik Hovanes for sponsoring today's Kiddush. We're back to having a Shabbat Kiddush. There are two openings, one on the 18th and the other on the 25th, where we're still planning to have an outdoor Kiddush. If any of you want to sponsor that, please get in touch with Andrea Rothberg or Barbara Saunders Adams. I don't see her right this moment, but Okay, good. And they'll be happy to help you. Please go to the PJC website to get your schedule for what's coming up. There's a rumor that Yom Kippur is soon, so be ready. Rabbi Resnick and Rhonda Singer are working on sort of, I guess, augmenting the Bikor Kolim group. Rhonda's been doing this for a long time, so this is not new, but it would be wonderful to have more people visiting the sick among our congregation. Thank you, Rhonda. And please contact Rhonda or the rabbi if you want to participate. Soup Kitchen is run by Jill Goldenberg, and there's one coming up on September 23rd. If you wish to participate and help out, please contact Jill. And if you're good with rotisserie chicken, salad and brownies, please talk to her. Okay. Look at the pamphlet that the rabbi made on adult education. There's some really beautiful classes and teaching that he wants to do. I myself am really looking forward to it. I think if you look at it, you'll also feel very inspired to participate. And then, even though we have something on our immediate horizon, Sukkot is not far off. And we need people on the 19th to build the sukkah. So at 10 a.m., we need volunteers. You can also volunteer if you have any teenage or young adults. You can volunteer them. Anyway, please come and help. It's always a lot of fun and a good chance to get to see everyone. And with that, I want to wish everyone a Shabbat Shalom.
Please do bring your, if you have these still, you can bring them and stack them up here. If you have books, if we can at least bring them towards the center, towards the front, and stack them up, it'll be easier to bring them in.
Adon olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nivra li'ed nasa b'chefsocho azay melech shemo nikra v'yacharei kichlot hakol levado yimloch nora Vehu haya, vehu hove, vehu yeh b'tifara. Hu echad v'yein sheni, lehamshir lo lehakbira, v'li reshit, v'li tachlit, v'lo ha'oz v'ha'misra. Vehu Betzur chevli b'yetzara Vehu nisi umanos li Venat kosi v'yom ekra b'yado Avkid ruchi v'yeti shan v'yahira V'im ruchi gevihati Adonai li v'lo ira.
Good Shabbos.
Thank you. Yes, you're fine.
I didn't do much today.
You were fine. You held us.
That was amazing.
If you just put them on the chair, we can.
I'm on.
No, at least save a few of them. What's that? That one is torn. So I'm gonna fix it maybe. Soon, very soon, God willing.